Do you ever wonder how great leaders in the community make things happen? When they encounter new, unexpected challenges like a pandemic, how do they continue to successfully make an impact? Welcome to That Sounds Terrific, the podcast that connects you with these amazing people. Get insights on what they do to meet their goals, find out how you can help them in their mission, and learn their methods so you can be more successful at what you do. Welcome to That Sounds Terrific with host Nick Koziol.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Joining me again, actually, today is Christine Green. You've seen her in past episodes, and if you've checked out That Sounds Terrifying, you've seen her on that. I was just saying kind of off the air, she's like my most reoccurring guest, and why are you back for more punishment? Welcome to the show, Christine.
Because I love it. It's so much fun.
Well,
Thank you.
I was really excited because we were talking and staying in touch. Obviously, some of the fans of the show probably know that we were featured in 585, and we've been doing a couple different things with you on that front. But then you told me when we were meeting that you had a book coming out, Sweet Tooth. Super exciting. And I wanted to kind of highlight that in the show and talk a little bit more about that. So why don't you just kind of start off like with the basics, right? It's called Sweet Tooth. It's a memoir, right?
Yeah. So it's a memoir consisting of essays, very short, what I would call like flash nonfiction pieces, and a smattering of poems, like 4 or 5 of them. And I originally didn't intend any of these pieces to go in a book per se. I was writing them for workshop or with a friend or whatever. I was doing these various pieces and submitting them to different journals. And then of course, like many people during the pandemic, I thought maybe these fit together. And so I worked with a couple friends and organized them, and yeah, now I got a book.
That's awesome. And it's kind of, you're having a release party coming up in a little bit over a month, right?
Yep.
Which is exciting. And I'm sure that's open to the public too,
It's
right?
open to the public. So it's July 28th at Cheshire. And I should have the exact address.
Oh, it's 695 South Clinton in Rochester.
Look
if you're
at that.
local, check it out.
Yes.
So yeah, I try to keep my notes close, right?
You're
I would
very
know that.
good.
I would not know that off the top of my head.
I should know it off the top of my head, but I didn't.
You've got enough on your plate.
Yeah.
I mean, but so, all right, like, so you told us a little bit about like, kind of how it sort of came together, but like, why did you ultimately decide like, to write this and to put it all together? What pushed you over the edge?
What pushed me over the edge? That's a really good question. I think, like a lot of writers, I had a lot of material, some of it published in different literary journals and magazines and stuff, and other pieces that weren't, that, I maybe workshopped with friends or just worked on by myself. And I have that folder on my computer of my stuff, right? Of like, and I have it usually organized by years. And it was kind of the beginning of 2020, or beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And I was like, well, I have this time, I should be writing. And I'm not the kind of writer, and I will never tell anyone else, like, get up and write every day. You have to do it. Like, you do what you can. Everyone has different styles. And I'm just never been that person. I go on these streaks. I'm very deadline and driven. I'm assignment driven. So if someone says, let's exchange like prompts for a story, I'll be like, oh my God, I have to do it because they're relying on me. So I was kind of feeling this like, oh, I need to do some work. And so I did a couple online, there's a lot of online stuff, as you know. So I did some online workshops, and I had a few more pieces. And I was talking to a friend of mine who has a book coming out in October. His name is Kyle Semmel. He's a local writer. His book is called The Book of Losman. It's really, really good. Their little friend promotion there. And I don't honestly remember, we were chatting about, he wanted to know if I wanted to look at a draft of a book he was writing, not this one that's coming out, but a middle grade book.
Mhm.
I said, that would be really great. I'd love to do that. And as I'm looking through it, I'm thinking, I feel like I should do something with all this work that's been sitting there. And so I just kind of started from there. So it wasn't like this moment, like I have to put this book together. It was more of like, just slowly kind of came to me, looking for things to do, looking to kind of take my writing to the next step. And I've always told myself, and it's not a bad thing, it's just this feeling I've had in my gut my whole life, is that I have one book in me.
Mhm.
And maybe that's not entirely true. Maybe something else will come out later, but I don't have any plans. I'm not looking towards, all my future books. I feel like this might be the book. And I thought, well, here we go. And so
You have
here we are.
I have one book in me.
Yeah.
I think there's more. I think there is, but
We'll see.
we'll see. So maybe after hearing more about the process and stuff like that, maybe there isn't, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the killer. So like, so what about the process? Like, okay, so you decide, okay, I'm definitely doing this, and like, I think that's for a lot of aspiring writers, the getting published part or trying to figure out how to self-publish and all that other stuff is pretty tricky. So like, what method did you choose?
Okay, it's so tricky. So I started very traditional. I because my book is what some people might call kind of a hybrid work where it has different kind of forms, but it's
Hmm.
also nonfiction and it's kind of memoir. I was really having a hard time finding one of the quote big publishers who were looking for that kind of thing. That's not always the kind of thing when you walk into Barnes and Noble is right there
Right.
at the front, right? So they're not always looking for that. They may be, but I wasn't finding that. And so I went with a lot of independent presses and publishers, just a lot of Googling, a lot of talking to people and submitting and getting rejected, submitting and getting rejected.
Hmm.
And the first submission, after I put it all together and had my friends read it and read it and read it and organize it, the first one that was rejected, it stung. And I can't even, it's funny because I can't even remember where that was now. I could look it up, but why?
Right.
Um, and then, but after that, they didn't so much. Kind of like when I was publishing smaller pieces, it's just part of what happens. Um, and then another friend of mine, Jeanette, I was telling her about all this, and I said, I don't quite want to go the self-publishing route. Not no shade against anybody who self-publishes.
Hmm.
I've read tons of self-publishing books and I just beautiful stuff. But I don't want to do all that work. Like I don't want to make a
Yeah.
cover. I don't know how to do that. I don't want to deal with AI bots on Amazon trying to figure this out. I want
Right.
someone to work with me as a project. She says, well, what about visual studies workshop? They have the small press book fair every year in September. And she said, I went to it and there are a lot of these small publishers and small press people here in Rochester. And I said, you're right. I had been to that many years before and I didn't quite think about it. And I kind of wish I had before because I'm such like a Rochester booster.
Hmm.
So I just, again, I mean, Google's your best friend. I tell people that all the time when they ask me random questions. I'm like, dude, Google is free. So I spent that free money on Google looking for the person who basically runs the small press fair. And his name is Dan Varenka. And I found his website and he has a press called Zaftig Press. And he's published books of poetry with other writers. He does a lot of
Cool.
zines. I
Hmm.
never say it right.
I
Is
think
it
it is zines. Yeah.
zines? Like magazines, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I submitted it. He had a whole process, if you'd like to be considered for publication. And he got back to me after a couple months and he said, I'd love to work with you on this project. And so now here we are. It's scheduled to come out in the next few weeks, like early July.
Mhm.
He's working the bookbinder. Who knew? I didn't know there was a bookbinder here. There's several the bookbinder who does all the gluing is out of town, so we need to wait for him to get back. But yeah, so I'm
That's
talking a lot.
exciting.
But
No,
yeah,
but
it's
that's what
very
you're supposed to do. You're on a podcast.
yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, it'd be really, really boring just
Yeah,
hearing me talk.
true.
No, but that's really, really exciting. And like I said, I know that that's part of the process that people are probably the most scared of. And it's, in a way, it's good to hear that you struggled a little bit because
Yeah.
like it is a struggle. And I have a lot of friends that are in the arts, and one of the things that they have is real tough skin. Like, getting used to rejection and letting it bounce off of you. And that's not always been my strength, in
Yeah.
acting and doing different things. I bruise and I kind of go and whimper in the corner a little bit about it,
Oh
and then I
yeah.
then I come back, but books, for me, like that's something that that's on my bucket list. I want to write one. I don't know what
Yeah.
I want to exactly do it on. But I also know that it's a process, right? There's
Yeah.
a lot of things, I got a lot of hoops I'm gonna have to jump through, and I've got enough hoops right now. So that's kind of a back burner kind of
Yeah.
project for
It'll
me.
happen. It'll
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah. So, but I'm excited for you. I think that like I said, this is a cool little episode for people that are thinking about writing a book to kind of maybe reach out to Christine Green and say, how the heck did you do this? And
Yeah.
you've always been super helpful to me, so I know that listeners can kind of reach out to you and ask that same question. Um,
Absolutely.
but so so what's like next? I mean, you've got the launch party coming, right? So like, is there some sort of book tour that you're doing? Like,
Oh my gosh, if only that were a reality. No, I don't have anything like that. You know, that kind of stuff without an agent, without one of
Mhm,
these big publishers. I mean, even with an agent and a manager and a big publisher, a lot of that stuff is on the onus of the author.
mhm,
Um, and I don't have that kind of thing. I don't have that in me. I don't have the budget, right? Like there's
right.
no one saying, now if somebody says, please come to our city and we will fund you to come
Mhm,
do this, great. Um, but right now that's not it. It's going to be local only right
mhm.
now. Um, so of course I'll have the launch party. I did a reading last Friday at Little Shop of Porters on Monroe and
Oh,
Miggs.
cool.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was with three other artists from Visual Studies Workshop who everyone had like different thing. It was so cool, different things going on. And I've done a lot of readings in the past, so I'll read a little bit at the launch party, but I really just want it to be a launch party.
Mhm.
I'd love to do more local readings from this specifically. So anyone listening wants to have me read and sell books, I'm there.
Yeah, we'll have to have Christine Green booked for her booking.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. Um, so why don't we talk a little bit like what kind of things can readers expect like from within that? So you said there's poetry, there's a couple different things. How to like
Sure.
I don't want to put you on the spot and have you do a reading, but if you want to do that, that'd be kind of cool too. But what's in
Yeah.
there?
So one of the things, that's a really good question. And so I guess I'll start by this. One of the things I like to write about a lot for a variety of reasons is my childhood. I had a really great childhood, but I'm very, very driven by sense memories, like the smells.
Hmm.
I'm a very visual person. Um, I'm always trying, I'm that person that's always trying to kind of reach in the back of my head, like, oh, I just remembered this a little bit of
Hmm.
this thing, this really bizarre little thing that happened when I was 4. And so I'm always trying to explore memory.
Hmm.
So I had quite a few pieces of memory, of really exploring that kind of memory, essays and very short pieces of, and like I said, a couple poems, kind of recalling instances that have of my childhood and
Hmm.
things that were important to me, and they're very, very specific. And so as I was looking at this body of work, I had a lot of those, and then I had this chunk of stuff of writing about when my father passed away, in that period of my life, and that I was 21 when he died suddenly of a heart
Hmm.
attack. And so obviously that's very formative, and we know
Yeah.
now at 21 your brain isn't even fully grown, like your
Yeah.
brain is literally still moving. And I, of course, at the time, I thought I was just practically a full grown, I was an adult, right?
Yeah.
I was like, no, I wasn't. And it's only in my older years that I'm realizing how that affected my whole life,
Right.
everything, my parenting, my relationships. So I had several pieces that were pretty pivotal pieces. And again, these memories and this exploration of the time when my dad died, kind of like right before and after. And then I had a lot of pieces of writing that were about my parenting, and having these little kids. And so when I kind of laid everything out, it was this kind of flow of, like, I have it in three parts. So my childhood, what I call the interlude, is this time when my father passed away. And then afterwards, when I have my own kids and I'm
Hmm.
looking back to when I was younger and looking kind of forward into my later years. So it's interesting. It's not a full, like, I was born David Copperfield and now here I am. It's these little kind of chunks of my brain, chunks of memory, chunks of my, you
Yeah.
don't want chunks of my brain. So I don't know. That was kind of a weird, long explanation, but maybe that makes some sense.
Yeah, yeah, it did. I mean, it's the different stages that you kind of had in life, and some
Sure.
childhood stuff, and then like a big
Yeah.
transition where, like, sorry about your dad. I mean,
Thank you.
that's tough on, at any time in life, but that's such a, again, like a pivotal moment, like where you're emerging as an adult. And then I work with those that age group all the time, right? In college
Yeah.
and stuff like that, where, I am an adult, and it's an interesting time for a young person, and that mind development, like you said, is still
Sure.
going on. So why Sweet Tooth? How did that come about?
So it's interesting. I have a little kind of very early putting it together. So, like I said, a lot of my writing, especially from when I was young, but even when I was older, is very sensory, right? I'm
Hmm.
remembering having Kool-Aid out of a plastic teacup in my yard with my mom. I can remember the scent of Pine Sol when she would clean the house. And I was with and honest, there was no honest intention of this, but a lot of these essays up until the third part revolve around this, like, memory of food, or I talk about dreaming about food, or how food in some ways defines periods and moments in our life.
Yeah.
I have, like, this very short essay, for example, about Jello at my dad's funeral. Like, people are talking about, like, what do we bring? What do we bring?
Hmm.
I talk about eating candy in the parking lot of this, like, shopping center when I was like 14 with my friend, and watching the boys do what do you call it, skateboarding, and we're
Yeah.
buying candy. And so it just seemed to make sense that I talk about, I it sounds silly, but I write about candy and sweets, and
Mhm.
it comes together. It's not as weird as it is weird, but it's not as bizarre as it sounds. There is a cohesiveness to
Yeah.
it. So
I don't think, like, when I think about memories, and they say scent, like you were even saying, is something that will bring back memories, that it's more vivid, right? So when
yeah.
you think about food too, like, when do you have the best sort of like meals and things. It's around occasions. It's around
Hmm.
things where you're building. You think Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the 4th of July. Like the smells that are happening there
Yeah.
are also very often related to food or being outdoors, and
Yeah.
then it connects to like a key and pivotal moment in your life, because usually you're surrounding yourself with loved ones,
Yeah.
and having those experiences. So like you walk by a barbecue, and all of a sudden you're back to like the 4th of July, 1989 or whatever, when like that was your last moment with so and so. It's just, it makes a lot of sense. I don't think it's as far-fetched or kind of crazy as you think it's coming out,
Yeah.
because like all of those things kind of twist together, and that's cool. And I love the title Sweet Tooth. I think it is like a really cool way to kind of pull all those things together, right?
Yeah.
Um
Thank you. Yeah, I do
yeah.
too.
Well,
Obviously.
good. So one of the other questions, like again about process and stuff like that. So like when I go back, and I used to write a lot more than I do now, and like I've gone back recently and looked at some of the things I wrote. I'm like, holy crap, what the heck was wrong with me?
We all do. We all do. There's a
Right?
lot that will never see the light of day, right?
Yeah, and especially anything that I wrote about like being having a crush on someone or something like that, and like, wow, are you a stupid idiot? No wonder you were so alone in those years. Right? So, but
Yeah.
like, did you have those kinds of moments? Look, I mean, it sounds like these are more well-developed like essays that you probably have published elsewhere, but did you go like, no way is this making the book? Or like, did you
There's
have those moments?
a couple, there's a couple, there's a few, yeah, that I'm like, I'm not gonna write about, I'm not gonna expose this.
Mhm.
But I am, for better for worse, which is really interesting, I'm very, very in my adult years. So like when I was younger, there are journals I've completely destroyed and I don't care, because they're the stuff I wrote in them were like, oh God, like high school and
Yeah.
college. They're not good. They're not going to do anyone good after I'm long gone. They need to never, they're like gone, right? But the stuff, let's say the stuff I've saved on my Dropbox in my adult years are is fairly safe. It's not as bad. There's certainly pieces that are less developed,
Mhm.
um, and kind of aren't ready, or not even not ready, but just they're not, at least for this book. And
Oh,
I'm very, like I said, I'm very
see,
kind
that
of,
sounds like an next book's coming.
yeah, well, maybe.
They're not
And
ready
I'm
for this
very,
book.
everything I write. So a lot of
Yeah.
people say they don't write for other people, and that's cool, but I do. Every
Mhm.
time I put pen to paper, even if I'm writing about myself or my children or whatever, I write with the idea that this will be read by someone else, whether
Mhm.
it'll be at a reading or in a journal or just sharing with someone. So I'm very conscious of who I talk about and how I talk about those things. And like I said, anything truly embarrassing from earlier years is just dead to the
Just
world. So
gone.
it's just gone.
Well, mine stuff is still around somewhere. It's still written in like, crazy fancy, what I thought was fancy cursive in some journal somewhere. Um
It's a miracle. We are probably the last generation that can write cursive, right?
they've gone back and forth, so like I think some of my like one of my kids doesn't know how to write cursive, but the others do, because they kind of like stopped it and then they went back to it for a little bit. So, or what I love is when you're looking at some of those and it's like it's not really cursive, it's just they connected all of their printing. Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I'm writing in cursive and I look at it and it's like literally like connected, but I'm like, that's okay. All right,
Yeah.
whatever. So, but did you kind of on the same lines, but like so like you're getting ready. I'm sure you've had a couple iterations of the transcript and trying to put it together and final. Was there anything that like made the book that like maybe you not fought with your publisher about, but like really like fought to keep it in, or
No, so Dan, it's really cool working with Dan, and
Mhm.
anyone listening, I highly recommend looking up Dan Varenka's Zaftig Press, because he's truly an artist. He has worked at Flower City Arts, and of course he does the Small Press Book Fair. So he looks at this in a way kind of different than a typical publisher. Say if you're going like with Penguin or Random House or one of those guys, or even like one of the smaller but more well-known, like say Pink or Grey Wolf Press. Those are like a lot of indie books. So he's looking at this as a piece of art that we're collaborating on. So in his mind, he's like, you gave me a beautiful finished manuscript. He wants no changes. He hasn't asked for that. Of course, he, just like I've had my readers, he went through it fine tooth comb. He's like, do you know you spelled this wrong? And I'm like, how many people look at this? But that's what he does. So for him, he's looking at it, and I'm trying to see, like, he's handwritten. These are not final ones, but like he's hand drawing the cover. He has, you walk into his place in the Hungerford, and he has just stacks of paper and tons of printers, and he's saying, I'm going to print it on this machine. And I'm like, oh, but it's all like, it's his expertise. And he's like, what about the weight of this paper versus this paper? And this paper is called, you know, such and such, and this paper's called this. And I'm like, whatever you think looks good. And so I love that level of detail that he's putting in. So to go back to your question, is no, he was very much like, you have given me your finished art. Now it's my turn to turn that into a different type of art. So that's been wonderful to work with. So he's really, really sweet.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you know what just popped in my head? That, you know, is it scented paper?
No, but wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah.
We're actually, the cover, this is like a pink version. We're actually going to go with a white cover, and there'll be, there's a lot of versions that he's printed, you know, as we're going through this. This is just very early, but we'll have some photos on pink paper. He's taking some photos I gave him and putting them through these various different scanners. I just thought a scanner was a scanner. I don't know, but they're not. There's different kinds and they do different things. And I'm so excited. It's going to be really cool. And yeah. So
well, I'm excited too. And I can't wait for it to come out. I can't wait for it to be read, you know, and I'm definitely going to get hopefully a signed copy, because I sort of know the author.
Yeah, you sort of do. Yeah, absolutely. You will. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, here's the part of the show, like, where, you know, I asked that infamous question, like, is there anything that we haven't talked about you definitely want to tell the audience about? Like, obviously we're going to put in the show notes, like, where they can get the book. So we'll have links for that. You know, we'll reiterate the launch party, so people can show up at 695 South Clinton, Rochester, to kind of see the launch party of the Cheshire, which is, I love that place. So cool.
It is. It's so cool. And the woman who owns it is she's a writer herself and an English teacher. And she's so into promoting the art. So let's give her some business. Go.
Let's
12 to
promote her
3.
too.
Yeah. 12
Upcoming,
to 3,
another guest upcoming on That Sounds Terrific. We'll have.
Oh, I have a list of people.
Oh boy.
For you. I won't send them all to you yet.
You can just send them all.
Okay, I will.
I might have to recruit you as a co-host. You're coming on the show enough, right?
I mean, dude, I love it. As you know, I love talking. Is there anything? What was the question? Is there anything
else that you want the audience to know about Sweet Tooth, or what you're doing, or that stumper question?
It's I'm excited for people to read it and kind of learn about who I am, and hopefully it's resonates with people. I hope it gets other people wanting to maybe do their own writing, or just even think about their own memories. It's just such a fun experience and exercise to write about, even if you don't ever plan to publish, even if you don't consider yourself a writer, to write about memories of in your life, whether they're recent or long ago. And that's, I found a really great way to approach writing if you don't know where to start or what to write about, and you want to write about yourself, is to pick a memory. I used to teach kids college essay writing, and they always wanted to write this big essay about everything they did at school and why they deserve to go to college. I'm like, no. Tell me about the time that you lost a baseball game. Tell me specifically, oh, that's not going to get me into college. And like, trust me, you need to talk about yourself. That's how we understand who we are.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's with the decisions that we make from like encountering that challenge, right? And like what we felt and talking about that's a great point.
Yeah.
So, well, you've been again a terrific guest.
Oh, it's been fun. I could talk all day.
I know, me too.
That's why.
But I don't think that they want that. I think that the audience wants a pretty succinct show, right?
Yeah.
But Christine, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for all that you do. Again, people that are interested in, becoming a writer or, writing in general, definitely someone that you'd want to reach out to is Christine. And then also get a copy of Sweet Tooth and try to show up to the launch party on July 28th from noon to 3 at Cheshire in Rochester.
Yeah.
So thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Don't forget to check out the show notes and our website at thatsoundsterrific.com to find the contact information and the best ways to volunteer with the organizations that we feature. If you know someone that is doing terrific things and think they should be featured in a future episode, be sure to email us their name, contact info, and short description of what they're doing at thatsoundsterrific@gmail.com. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and give us some social media love by liking our Facebook page, That Sounds Terrific. Follow us on Twitter at Sounds Terrific 2 and Instagram at Sounds Terrific. We love hearing your feedback on how to make our show sound even more terrific. Till next time.